Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to work on two of the Git commands. One is Git Stash and one is Git Checkout. And what are the scenarios on which we can use these two commands and how it's going to be useful. Stash, basically what does Git Stash does and what are the scenarios on which the Git Stash can be useful. Git Stash basically allows you to save your uncommitted changes. So that when you come back to your branch again, you can save those changes. And the same thing, Git Stash and Git Checkout also helps you with that. But Git Checkout is a bit different than Git Stash. What Git Checkout does is, let's say you have worked on your feature, you have committed few changes, and rest of the work that you have done, let's say you don't want to save those changes at all. You want to ignore those changes and start fresh after those two commits. So what you do is you use that git checkout command. And what git stash does is, let's say same scenario, you have some uncommitted changes, also you have some committed changes, but you are not ready to finish that feature yet. And suddenly you it's an urgent work and you have to switch branches. In that case, you have to save the broken code, right? It's not completed, it's broken. You have to save those changes. How do you do that part? So what you do is you don't commit those changes. Instead, you put those uncommitted changes in your local repo. And when you come back to the branch again, you can pick those same uncommitted changes and apply those changes or work on those changes eventually committed. So let's go to the Git branch. So if I do git status, you can see we are on this feature add methods branch right here. I'll go to that code piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another comment here. I'm going to add this comment that working on a temp method, right? I'm going to save piece of code, and I'm again going to go back to the terminal. And if I do git status, you can see this is the uncommitted change. Now what I will do is I will save this change in the repo. So if I do git add, it's going to save it. Then if I do git status, ready to be committed. Now if I do git commit, adding comments, and it is now committed into that. So it is now committed to this branch. Once it is done, how git stash comes into picture, right? So now we are going to do it. So I'm going to add another method here. We are going to pass few parameters and going to return x into y, and we're going to save it. And once it is done, let's say if I do git status, you can see that these are the uncommitted changes. Now the interesting part is, let's say you want to ignore these changes, right? You don't want these changes anymore. Let's say you made some mistake over there and you messed up that folder or something like that, and you want to ignore everything after the last commit. One easy way to do is you do git checkout dash and dot. So what this function or this method will do is it will ignore all the changes done since the last commit. So if I press enter and then do git status, you can see that there are no uncommitted changes. And the same way, if I go to the code piece, you will see that method itself is gone. So that means all those changes has been lost. That multiply method is gone now. Now once it is done, right? So that's git checkout method. So the other method is git stash. So I'm going to show you how git stash is useful. I'm going to do the same thing again. Git public static end, then multiply. Spelling is wrong, right? So I'm not going to save this. So what I'm going to do is int x into y. So this is a wrong implementation, right? So I'm not returning any values. The method itself is wrong. So it's not ready for commit yet. And I have to switch branches because there's an urgent works in some other folder. So if I do git status, it will show that this is the work that I have done, but I'm not ready to commit yet. So what I'm going to do is type in git stash. So this is going to create a copy of this change in your local repo. So as you can see, saved working directory and index and so and so. That means this is saved. And if you want to say and do a git status, it should not show this part of the work. So if I do git status, as you can see, back by 3 commits. That means the local changes is basically removed and went back, and now we have a feature commit, which is, so that's the previous commit we committed before. If I do git stash list, it will show me all the stashes, all the changes for which I have created this stash. So if I do git stash list and press enter, it will show me these are the 2 changes that I have saved. One I did before, and this, let's say, we did now. So I want to pick this stash, right? Stash 10. So what I'm going to do is git stash apply and then stash @1. So as you can see, the change again came back. So if I go to the code base, it will again be there. So that's how Git Stash is useful. So even the uncommitted or changes, you can save those changes, which can be later retrieved, so that you can work on the same feature, continue on the same feature again without losing any uncommitted or broken work. So that's how Git Stash is useful. Do check out these two commands, because these two commands are very useful when you are working on a fast moving environment as well as